wasn't sure on the end of this session, my experience in the local community is that, and reaffirmed by the trivia session this morning, is that most folks in the community are very like deep, like C#, like .NET. Like I know there's a lot of that. So I am curious, who has front end as a primary focus of your day to day or hobbyist? Yeah, perfect. Let's just do a quick like general skills check. Who feels only comfortable with like basic CSS knowledge?
Yeah.
Good with that? Who was pretty confident like building a landing page with CSS? Okay, I just want to see like where we're at. So I talk about CSS a lot. My blog is moderncss.dev. If you want to learn more about probably some things that we might get into today, check that out. They're in-depth tutorials. There's some other resources, but that's the main one. That's easiest to remember the URLs. So I don't have anything formally prepared, but there's a lot that's happened in CSS. We can do a flyover tour, or if there's a feature you've heard about, we can just...
What did you call it? A what kind of tour?
Flyover.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, sorry, I'm probably not projecting enough here. So anyway, so right off the bat, anybody come with something in mind they've heard about, they would like to know a little bit more?
New selectors.
New selectors?
I don't remember what they're called.
Okay, like is and where?
Yeah.
And okay.
There's like functions.
Yeah, there's some fun ones.
Okay, so where the difference between those? A little function.
Yeah, let's give ourselves this lovely classic, little list just to style up. It's nothing too special, actually. It'll be. You give us some like super high school baseline styles just so we can see what's going on a bit better. Okay. So is and where. So whereas typically if you needed to select groups of things, we're talking about like a list of elements, like you need to select, maybe I need to select my LIs, but I also want to style my paragraphs. You know, let's throw a paragraph on here just for folks. I can get a click. Okay. By the way, when we code in, we'll try to share the URL later if we come to anything worth sharing. So, you know, whatever I want to do, right? Classic color it. So we have a few selectors, such as is and where, that help us with this grouping scenario. Some distinct features. So this is pretty acceptable. This is going to continue to be acceptable when you're doing something really, really basic like this. But sometimes it's a little bit annoying to do these sorts of grouping selectors. If, say, I wanted to select these elements, but only if they were in a particular context. So maybe if they're within an article. Get this moved. There we go. So right now it's still working, but I only want to select it in this context. So before we had these newer selectors, I would have to say, qualify each of these individually, right? So I'd have to say article LI and article P. But now with is and where, I can simplify this grouping. So I'm going to instead say, first give it my context of the article. And then I can say, within that article, let's look and see if it's either a paragraph or an LI. So it's simplifying, right? That's our kind of first stage. Yeah.
Okay, so additional question. Is CSS has listing on it?
Yes.
So what's the difference?
Good question. So let's talk about, so we have is and we also have where, and this will help clarify the difference. So with is, we have the specificity matching the element with the highest specificity. So if I had something in here with an ID, now this entire selector has a specificity of ID, which is going to overrule in most scenarios, right? It's going to really bump up our specificity. So our companion to is where. And if I use where, then the specificity of this entire clause is 0. So that's when we would use one of these grouping selectors versus nesting. So in other words, if I have is, and I later am like, oh, just more generically, I want my paragraphs to be blue. From a combination of specificity and the cascade, actually, so article, so we have a little similar specificity. Even though the cascade says it should probably win, because it comes later than this definition is going to continue to win because it has the specificity of that ID. So if I take that out, the cascade should kick in, and now we have equal specificity. Let me put the ID back in. If I switch this selector of is to where, it nullifies, brings down to absolute 0 the specificity of this clause. So now I'm able to override it. Does that make sense so far? Okay, so you asked about nesting. So in nesting, that's where, if you're familiar with a preprocessor like SAS or less, we now have native capabilities. So I'm in CodePen, I'm not running with a preprocessor. So I'm in Chromium browser, but nesting we've had almost a year. We can go look at the browser support. I am able to, in nesting, I could bring in is, so I could still do those grouping. It would still, somewhat simplify this for me, depending on the capability I wanted. Especially because that capability to add like an ID in here kind of helps me do that kind of false importance, basically. So it just gives us another way to address these scenarios. If I bring this back up to is, though, where I have the ID, we're going to go back to red because of that specificity. So yeah, a few different ways to select depending on what your goal is. Basically, this one helps you kind of fight against the cascade a little bit, say my rule is more important. But similarly, where is really useful in like a reset scenario. So you might say, this is my baseline style, but I'm totally okay with other things like overriding it and even data class or whatever combination of stuff. We good on those two?
The bottom two then have the same specificity if that is the case on line 21.
Presently they do, yes, because they would be just an element selector. Yes. Yeah. Another fun thing that happened, so you may have noticed, a critical feature that makes this work is the fact that we can do a list of items. Around the same time that these came out, Not also became able to accept a list of selectors. So I'm not sure if you can think of do anything, so anything else in here, let's do a link and put on the other. Yeah, so basically, within my article, if it's not one of these items, then it obtains that color. Previously, we could only do one item at a time, and that led to having a shape. So just a little minor upgrade that can come in handy for you as well. We also have, actually, let me just undo what I have there. We also, for selectors, let's put our list. Let's do, we give a couple of these a class. Or special. We also now have the capability to address items. We've had the ability for a while to do like input type, right? So we could count and say the third list item. Now we can just bring that more specific and say, they're called the nth of s. It's not a very elegant thing we can mention. But we can look more specifically at, based on the special class for this instance. So let's say, apply and child gets 2 of special. I haven't used this one very much yet, so I have to go double check. Other haven't used. So, whereas previously, let's do a comparison. I could say ln and child. I could just do something very basic. I could count it. I could do every third. But even if it was hidden, which is a scenario that I encountered, like when you're trying to do zebra stripes on table rows or something, and maybe you have a filtering mechanism too, so your table stripes get off track, you can get into an issue. So this of in syntax can help counteract that, because you can be more explicit about a condition. So that one's not the most ritzy example, but it can be pretty useful. So you can kind of see the difference, because this is specifically second of my special, but not second of my list items. Let's see. Were there other ones you were thinking of for letters? Has is also really exciting.
Yeah.
Super excited about has. So has is most folks call it the parent selector, or at least that's the capability that got the buzz. It's not just about parent selecting, though. Actually, probably easier for me to go to a code and show you some more practical demos that I already have. I'm going to try to do the HTML to online. Did a article for SitePoint last year. We did a lot of has stuff. So we can style things that are apparent, but also this particular animation shows styling the previous or elements that are prior to the one I'm currently hovering and the ones following. So this is all just a CSS. So this is the effect. So how is it being done? So on hover of the specific item, that's pretty typical. We're styling that exact item. But if we bring in the magic of has, let me bump up the font size, sorry. To get the items before that hover one, we can check, is this a list item that has a list item following it that is being hovered? Okay, so that's the directly preceding one. And then also selecting the list item directly following the one being hovered, directly preceding, directly following. And then the more complicated one is when a list item is being hovered. You might notice we're affecting all the list items, not just the ones directly before and after. So now we're looking at kind of a combination of things. We're looking at the parent, the unordered list. We're saying, does it have a direct child being hovered in any of them? Okay, we have a child with a hover condition. So now look and say, if it is not the list item directly being hovered, if it's not the list item directly after the hover or directly before the hover, then they're getting even more of a scale down and even more of an opacity. So pretty powerful stuff. CSS is a programming language, by the way, so don't forget. So quite a few cool capabilities it has given to us. I appreciate that this feels really complicated. And I know that some of the pushback against modern CSS is that it's getting more complicated. But I don't learn TypeScript, so we are capable of doing that. I don't want to have that excuse anymore. Here's another like practical usage of it, similar concepts that we just looked at, where in this case we're doing a CSS only star rating, and the underlying mechanism is radio component. So therefore, I'm able to pick up on the checked condition and use that as something that's being looked at in these conditions. These demos are actually for a Smashing magazine article. You can find the link if you want to learn more about it. And then go back. Another collection.
I love the trend.
Should have started with this one. Forgot I had the two articles. But more practically, like, let's just peel it back. What does has give to us? So on a really basic level, in this case, we're styling the parent article based on whether or not it has an image. So as demonstrated, you can see that means anywhere within the context, because we haven't further qualified it as being a direct child or any other thing special about it. Whereas this one, we've now said explicitly it should be a direct child of an arc. This one that's nested down a bit further, that's not counting, so we're only selecting the single article. This one, we're selecting the H1 when it is directly followed by an H2. So that's super handy. I've loved has for these kinds of conditions for sound typography. In this one, we're styling the unordered list if somewhere after it is a paragraph. So this is the general sibling selector. So it's looking anywhere after this. Have we found a paragraph? Then we're going to style the unordered list. This one is saying if the H2 is followed by an H3 and then has paragraphs, which this is also a little different too, because we're kind of looking behind. This is basically a look behind condition. We're looking behind the paragraph to determine what is the makeup here, and then subsequently styling the paragraph. I'm sorry, this looks like, this is basically regex in CSS. So I will say that so has is super well supported as well. If you do have to write selectors in JavaScript, has is obviously available to you there as well. It has genuinely simplified some of my JavaScript related selectors, being able to use has or is and where. So just another little boost that if you're not writing CSS but you are writing JavaScript, this is super valid to still learn. Yeah, this one's more basic. This one we're looking specifically for a first child image and that it has an H1 and 2. So anyway, just a little preview of the breadth of selectors that you can come up with has. Is there any other features folks know about and learn about? Yeah.
I'm curious. One thing that was always like a cool demo, I don't know if it's practical, but from like SAS and like those compiled languages, was like this idea of like a single color website using color functions to like, you can do that now in regular CSS, right?
That's a good one. Yes, I'm glad you brought up color. Let's do that. I'm just going to comment down these other spells for now.
CSS has become one color CSS as well. That's good.
Yeah. So, let's see. We'll do. So, if I'm managing colors, I'll do my preferred path then, right? Let's do the thing of custom properties, right? So, we'll do a basic. We'll say my color primary. I'll just do all I usually do, which is kind of a purpley hue, saturation. Let's go back into this. Let's apply that to our custom properties. Sound familiar? Is this new to anybody? New to you? Good? Okay.
I love them.
Excellent. Anyways, we have a bluish. Great, fantastic. But if I wanted like a transparent version, or I wanted just a lighter or a darker version, it's gonna be the last thing we looked at, but it's a good one. Previously, I would have to expand out my variables if you were using the variables. If you're coming from a design system world, which is in my world as well. How we have done in the past, it's reasonable is like maybe you break out, you say, oh, actually, we'll just go ahead and create a different like hue variable here, plug that in, and then we'll have different hues. Like try to make it a little more manageable. And now we have, so let's say that I want to, for my background color, I just want to use a lighter version of that blue. So we'll say, so right now I would either need to create a different one, just discuss that's ideally not what I do, obviously say it's not gonna work. One way we can do this is the color mix function. So I'm gonna do kind of a hacky way on this one first. So this lets you mix two colors in a certain proportion. I have to say, give it a color space. So I'm going to take that one, I'm going to mix it with transparent. See if that one works. Okay. Might have this not work, so I might not have it HSL, or it might have too much. Let's do. All right, I've used this enough to memorize the syntax, so let's do a good old inspect and see what I missed here. But still in two. Okay, let me do an Indian color next real quick. Full stand of troubleshooting. I'm excited for this one. I haven't had occasion to use it. Okay, yes, so in HSL I did make that part. And then my two values, okay, yeah. I missed a comma, classic. There we go. Okay. Okay, so what's happened here? We've told this color to become 85% transparent, which is a happy place to get a lighter version, right? We also, though, have what's called relative color syntax. Background color, and leave for relative color, I need to say relative color. So yes, just color. So with relative color, we give the color function. I'll again say NHSL. It doesn't have to match the original color space, by the way. It's just a matter of how you want it to interpolate, which is definitely not something we can get into the details of. So I'm just picking NHSL for simplicity. But I can say, so then I've given my color to reference, so my color primary. And then I'll double check what that said. I can do. Sorry, I do need that out of control. We can say, okay, I have my color primary. We want to keep the hue. We wanted to keep the saturation, but for lightness, do take the L minus 45%. That's right. So leave that out. Well, again, something that I haven't used as much, but directly mimics the SAS. Basically, the SAS functions. I use SAS is done for light and dark. Right, give me the example I want here. From the end. No. I just read it. Not in HSL. We actually take the color function. Slash. I'm gonna go over 2 seconds. Right. Maybe just over there also. Have to do like this. All right, I'll go with that. Let's see if India has an example for us. All right, so in theory, you could go from your base color. You get the opportunity to basically take the part that you want to modify. So we're trying to modify it lightness value. And so in this one, they're increasing the lightness. In this one, that's just the standard color that's given. And then the final one, they're decreasing the lightness. So this has slightly less support. This relative color syntax has less support than color mix. So if you are looking for some basic transparency, which is not just good for transparency, you can also manipulate large functions with color mix. Anyway, these are tools available to really useful for custom theming, for giving users options to themes, for how to run background processes to get those spit out. Yeah, exciting stuff to keep an eye on. Don't worry about understanding color spaces. I don't set to it in my life, so that's fine. I hope that was moderately useful, but I'm happy to nerd out more in the hallway. That was success. Thank you.